Good morning, everyone. Welcome to day two of the C3EB Summit. We are, as I mentioned in my opening remarks earlier, today our main focus is on cultural competence, equity, and belongingness when it comes to government, governance, infrastructure, and sort of the societal leadership that we all need to have as informed citizenry. And so to start off the day in that framework, we have an amazing keynote speaker here today. It is my absolute honor to bring to the C3EB Summit platform Robert Jerus, who is the creator of the emotional intelligence EIQ2 assessment tool, which is all about emotional intelligence. Now, before I hand it off to Robert, I would like to just give you the official introduction for those who may not know Robert. Robert Jerus is the founder and CEO of Success Dynamics International and the creator of the EIQ2 Emotional Intelligence Assessment Tool. He's the author of Mind Matters, Applying Emotional Intelligence for Personal and Professional Success. And like I said, the founder of Success Dynamics International. The EIQ2 is an emotional intelligence learning and performing development systems. And Success Dynamics International and Robert also do emotional intelligence certification. He is a frequent speaker at public and private engagements. Robert has taught business, psychology, and adult development at various universities. He has also worked as a counselor in marriage and family therapy. As a consultant, coach, and trainer, Robert has worked with Fortune 500 organizations and aspiring entrepreneurs. And you can find out more about Robert at www.eiq-2.com. So with all of that, it is my absolute pleasure to hand over the stage to Robert. But wait, before I do that, a couple of quick housekeeping notes. Please make sure that you're on YouTube, our YouTube channel at C3EB Summit, or our Facebook page at C3EB Summit, so that you can comment and engage with us. We know that the YouTube channel commenting, as we've been moderating it, is more real time. So for more real-time engagement, we do recommend our YouTube channel for C3EB Summit. And just as yesterday, this would not be possible, this whole summit would not be possible without our partners and sponsors walking the walk with us. So a huge thank you to our partners and sponsors: Essential IT, Defy the Status Quo Marketing, Zanzibar Enterprises, and the Nielsen Company. With that being said, now I'm going to hand it off to Robert Jerus so he can educate us all on emotional intelligence. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, AJ. Much appreciated. I'll give you folks a little bit of the background that got me involved in diversity and equity and inclusion. I was working as a psychologist in Minneapolis, and one day I got an email that said I was going to be in charge of diversity for our system. Well, I think I've been invited to speak today because they wanted to have a white guy as a token for the speaker thing. But I kind of looked in the mirror when I got that email, and I saw that I was, something must be amiss here when you guys want me for diversity. And they explained to me very carefully, my boss was a Native American, my fiance was Filipino, and they really didn't have another psychologist who was available to work with diversity. So I was it. So that was my beginning trick. I always like to talk to people and make sure everybody realizes that diversity is a complex issue when we start on it. It's relational, what's your family like, what's your personal behavior, what's your generational, what's your occupation, what's your experience been, what have you seen in society, your economic position, your social position, your origins, your education, geographics, cognitive, physical, values. So the opening problem is when we start talking about it, everybody is diverse by definition. So when, as a leader, you want to include people, you start recognizing that here's the opening problem for organizations. Too many of them start by looking at diversity as a response to legal issues. I want to have diversity. I want to be inclusive. I want to utilize people so that we don't get sued, so that we're okay. We've checked the right boxes. Now, for most organizations, they don't see beyond the negatives and look to the positives. Diversity creates growth. It creates possibilities. It creates innovation. You want to be closer to your customer base? Be diverse. Want to expand? Be diverse. Want inclusive leadership that's going to relate to everybody? Be diverse. I always warn people that the leadership position is key. Too many people overlook it and neglect the power of it. We like to refer to the leadership nexus because the leader is the key person with feelings and emotions. Whatever they project are going to become the emotions of the team, which is subsequently going to become the emotions of the organization. When you're setting up culture and climate, those leaders are the catalyst for what you're going to get. Now, the headache becomes when we start trying to align it. Are we aligning with the people, the different teams, the organization? Yes, yes, yes. The people involved? Yes. How are our relationships? What are the stories the company is conveying? What are the stories we're sharing? Can we handle alternate perspectives, predispositions, perceptions? We've all got conscious and subconscious biases, whether we're aware of them or not. And I'm going to encourage you today to start becoming actively aware. Some of those biases, by the way, are for. Some of them are against. Some of them are going to promote different groups. Others are going to hold those groups back. Is your bias positive or negative? Are you active about it or is it passive? Now, on the right-hand side, I've put some of the major problems we have in organizations. We've all seen them. We've all run across them. Bullying, harassment, microaggression, bias, discrimination. How equitable are we? Do we include people? And those can be both passive problems and active problems. Very often we lose sight of what's really occurring. Now, the big three, diversity. Diversity is about having the puzzle pieces. I want to have a variety. Now that we've got a variety of pieces, if you're old enough, you probably remember the basic statement of we want to be a melting pot. So now we bring people in with substantial differences and we try and tell them, we want you all to be the same. Now that I got you with your differences, now you need to fit into the company. Well, once we move to inclusion, we're asking the questions of, am I allowing those differences? Am I accepting them? Am I leveraging them for the organization? And then we get to the question of equity, fairness. Are we being consistent? How are we dealing with social justice? Is that a concern in the organization? Are we integrating these people? And I saved the best for last, that magic term fairness. It's just not fair. What's fair? Fair is kind of an elusive word. If it favors me, if it feels comfortable to me, it's fair. If it doesn't, it's unfair. All too often, fairness becomes a very subjective term when we start dealing with equity. We want to deal with equal opportunity, but we're not necessarily looking for equal outcomes. I kind of conceded that being 5'11" and not being able to jump, my professional career in basketball was going to be very limited. Well, the four quadrants of emotional intelligence are going to set the baseline for what we're doing today. The first is self-awareness. Do you know who you are? Do you recognize what makes you special, what makes you different, what makes you unique? Do you appreciate it? Are you self-confident? Are you comfortable with who you are and what you're doing? Do you understand those biases that come with the package? Can you self-manage a little bit? Can you control those biases? Can you manage yourself? Do you have empathy for other groups? Social awareness? Can you manage relationships? Now let's flip it a little bit as well. How sensitive are you to discrimination? How self-aware are you of what other people are doing to you? How do you want to see them self-manage? We look at a cross-cultural these days. We're looking at multi-generational workplaces. We're looking at sexual revolution. We're looking at racism. We're looking at all of these coming together. Do we understand those cultures? Do we understand emotions and feelings that come with it? And can we perform as an organization? Can we achieve our missions? Can we achieve our values? Well, we're going to break up emotional intelligence a little bit here. We're going to start talking about personal mindfulness. Are you aware of who you are, your inner biases? And I've heard too many people say, I don't have biases. You sure do. You need to become a little bit more self-aware and recognize how you've been raised, where you've been raised, all of those things that occur to you. What's your internal diversity? If someone says, because you're this, that, and the other thing, you must be, not usually true. As William Shakespeare said, this above all, to thine own self be true. Are you authentic? What are your perspectives? Do you see diversity as a challenge, a threat, an opportunity? Where are you going with it? Is it a good thing for you? Is it a bad thing for you? Are you trying to just protect your territory? What's your leadership? And a lot of these things for the personal mindfulness are hardwired, and some are fluid. They change. They're subject to adjustment. Once we become aware, maybe I can become thicker skinned. Maybe I can become more tolerant. Maybe I can adjust my thinking. Maybe I can reframe some things. Like it or not, when we start blaming other people, it's your fault, it's their fault. I always like their fault. Their fault is always about those abstract people who I never see, but it's their fault. Take some responsibility. Self-manage. Make some choices. Leverage. Make this a positive thing. Don't suffer through it. Social mindfulness. It's great how we like to fix everybody else, how we see all the wrong things out there. And by the way, it is so much easier for us to find fault and blame than to look for what's right and understand how people think. We need to hear different stories. We need to accept and tolerate that there may be an alternate perspective that's simply not my perspective, but it's not necessarily wrong. We go through life thinking, I must be right. It must be my way. Do you care about these other people, or are you just giving them lip service? Do you really consider how they feel? And I'm using the word deliberately. Your emotions matter. Do you like them? We like to do business with people we know, like, and trust. But very often, that's a deal breaker to start with. I don't like you because you're different. I don't want to know you because you're different. And I certainly can't trust somebody I don't know or like. Are you interested? Are you engaged? Do you appreciate different people? Do you welcome them? Or are they just something I have to deal with? Then we move to the last quadrant of leveraging diversity. Let's be positive. Let's value those relationships. Once upon a time, it was politically correct to say, I don't see color, I don't see sex, I don't see race. And a whole lot of us went around scratching our heads saying, how do you not see those things? That's part of the other person's identity. And when you say, I don't see it and I'm going to ignore it, you're not even validating the differences. So let's listen to alternate stories, a different narrative. What was their experience? That's how we develop community. Now we've got two levels of thinking. This is where we all struggle. We like the first level. This is where we think we think. This is the higher things. I appreciate diversity. I'm unbiased. I'm fair. I'm deliberate. I'm rational. I'm thoughtful. I like everybody. I'm sure you'd all agree. That's pretty common. Now let's move to that second level. This is where we operate most often. This is that subconscious thing. This is the lower automatic stuff. Did you have those microaggressions? Were you uncomfortable? Were you shocked to see a woman CEO? Did you wonder if this other person got where he or she is because of some racial quota? What's your impulses? Are you thinking things through or are you just moving along? Well, you've got to manage self-awareness to move back and forth between that first and second level. Now, inclusion is a dynamic process. Too often we realize and we think of we are inclusive or we're not inclusive. Well, the real answer for leadership is it depends. When, with who, how, and we've got to answer those questions regularly. That's why I start with saying it's dynamic. How do you communicate? Kind of interesting, but when we start looking at generations in the workplace, some of those people want a text message, some want email, others want real mail. Call me on the computer. How are we doing this? How are we doing this holistically? We can be friends at work, but nowhere else. You can come to my office, but I'm not going to go to yours. What kind of equity are we dealing with? What seems fair to everyone? And the more perspectives we get on fairness, the more dynamic and inclusive it becomes. What are the opportunities for promotion? What are the intrinsic and extrinsic? What's access look like? Do you accommodate people? What kinds of accommodations do they need? Very often we even overlook those simple things of, I didn't realize that there was a difference there. How about our communication patterns? You people should understand me. Somebody out there may be scratching their head saying, who are you people? You people know this. Am I welcoming and respectful? Do I have some accountability for my action, my words? Coaching at all levels. Hopefully, if you've got good people around you, they'll call you out and tell you, that was a little bit awkward. That was a little bit uncomfortable, the language you used. Are we continuously learning? Once we expand our circles, we start learning more about them and we get more appreciation. Do we leverage different people, different talents? Do we align culture? Do we, in fact, resolve and redress issues? So we've got to take all of these dynamics in mind. And remember, you're not going to be getting perfect scores in all the areas all the time. Well, if it's mandated, it's them. I'm going to deal with you. You guys are the problem. I've got to cooperate. If it's us, we're inclusive. What's our culture? What's our proficiency? Are you invited or was I forced to take you in? The leadership self. How are we creating the culture? And very often people misunderstand culture. There's mine, there's yours, And there's the organizations. Start moving into an organization from a different country, it even gets more complex. What's the climate? What's the authority? Who can get ahead here? Do we allow and support differences? We have a little bit of courage to be open and sharing. Do we value people and validate them? How are your relationships? Let's empower people to connect. Now, we need to find value to people beyond their titles. Often when we meet someone, it's, what do you do? Who do you work for? Tell me your story. Share. Deepen that awareness of myself and other people. Let's get relationships. Wow. Personal and professional relationships. Yeah, that sounds good. But it also sounds a bit scary too. How non-judgmental are you? Well, there's your way and there's the right way. And that's, of course, my way all the time. Really? Once upon a time, I was wrong. So you need to have that community resonance. We need to go from sharing, participation. We move out to co-creation, cooperation. It's not just about my leadership, although I am the catalyst for the feelings, and I know it's an important position, but I want to invite you to communicate, contribute, and co-produce. How's the health? Do we empathize internally and externally? Are we proactive with utilization, involvement, inclusion, sharing? All of those good things are going to be about setting up the community. Now let's look at the emotional intelligence parameters. The self. What are your predispositions? What are your reactions? What are your core values? What's your character? What things do you value? How do you manage? Do you accept and include people? Do you invite them to play with you? Do you know, like, and trust them? Are you suspicious for different groups? Are you flexible and agile? Can I shift? Hey, you've got a better idea than me. Let's do it your way. Are we reactive or are we responsive and proactive? Is this something I want to be part or we're forced to? How are we doing socially? Are you paying attention? Are you listening to the verbals and nonverbals? Do you respect people? We hear this expression of give them a seat at the table, but they don't just want to sit there. They want to have a voice too. How are your relationships? It becomes pretty scary when you turn around and start telling me, some of my best friends are. That's a little bit frightening. It tells me you haven't moved to seeing them as people and allies, but you're seeing them as numbers and statistics. Well, let's attune your leadership. Be aware, be authentic, be aligned. Tune into people. When you think you've got all the answers, you're wrong. Tune into them. You hired these people. You got them involved. You're the leader. Let them contribute. Take their point of view into account. A little bit of difference is a good thing. Unify focus and effort. Be non-defensive. Have some empathy. Now, here's the parameter that we use. We generate this all with C's. You start by being comfortable with yourself. Be self-aware, be self-accepting. It's not about becoming one of them. It's about being you, valuing you, validating you, and enjoying that place where you can come together. Are you confident in yourself? Do you have some self-esteem? You'll find out that people who are confident and assured are interested in the stories. They're not threats. They're not challenges. In fact, they're invitations to expand. Are you curious? Do you have a real interest? Or are you just giving lip service to the thing? How's your character? Are you tolerant, courageous, compassionate? And then one of the things we struggle with these days is everybody looks for differences. I'm looking for what am I against? What am I for? But we focus on what's against and what's wrong too often, too easily. Once we look for differences, we find them. If I look for reasons not to like people, I won't. So I want to start looking for those common things. What are our shared values? What are our shared experiences? What are our goals? Focus on similarities before. Be collaborative. Cooperate, synergize, connect. Other people have skills that are going to help you out. Be constructive. Be positive. One of the themes that we often get is people feel threatened because different groups don't look at how can we increase everybody's abundance? Is there an opportunity for mutual growth and everybody to get more? Instead, we create threats when different groups achieve at the expense of others. So we want to be constructive. We want to look for positive mutual gains. Are you caring, concerned, curious? Be thoughtful, be authentic. It's okay to tell people, I didn't know the whole story. Please share with me. How do you communicate? What's your conversation? Are you listening or are you just sending things out there? Now let's move to the bridge. Bridging is fun. In life, it's been said that we all either build bridges or we build walls. Now, bridging requires recognizing your biases. It's got to be a dynamic awareness. We're looking to be bridges. Look for the common experience. Be positive, be authentic, be accepting and appreciative. Hey, that's different. That's fun. I like that. That really contributes. Bridging communicates. It listens. It's attentive. It's focused. It asks questions in a caring, positive, non-judgmental way. It's considerate. I want to learn more about you. Tell me more. The communication bridge is two-way. It's important. How's your conversation going? Is it respectful? Is it courteous, considerate, interested, involved, responsive? We need to get this for balance, harmony, and a little bit of peace. It's not going to be tense and adversarial. It's not going to be stressed. It's not going to be frightened and timid. It's assertive. We bridge with other people in a human, gentle, kind, compassionate way. You've made mistakes. So have I. Let's be a little bit forgiving. How about showing some mercy, understanding? Remember, as the leader, you're the key catalyst. Now let's look at the other parts of the bridge. I don't need conformity. I don't need you to stop being you. I want to connect with those differences. I'm going to share forward those perspectives. They make us all better. And notice I'm saying me. That's deliberate. I can't control that other person, but I can control myself. That's about the self-management of emotional intelligence. Bridging suggests that we're going to make shifts and accommodations. I didn't know that. I've learned something new. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate your help. It recognizes that tomorrow is going to be different than today. It takes a little bit of humility to be willing to back up and admit you were wrong. I don't want to be arrogant. My way is not always the best way. Too many of us as leaders like the idea of my way or the highway. I've worked hard to get where I am, so I've earned the privilege. I'm a leader. Well, maybe you've earned some respect, but maybe not. At least listen to where people feel awkward and uncomfortable with it. Are you being condescending? Treating other people as something else? How are you bridging your demands? Do you have constructive expectations? Or somebody just can't do that well because they're from this group and we all know how they are. Well, look for the positive in people. You'll find it. That's what bridging is. Take time to learn. Take some personal risks. Be vulnerable. Have some courage. Inclusion is about having some guts. We're going to look towards cooperation, collaboration, reciprocity. Let's lower that suspicion. Let's lower some of those barriers and try different things. I'm investing in myself. I'm investing in others. I'm investing in building that community. When we start talking about leaders, influencers, coaches, I like to warn people you lead, you influence, you coach at all levels. There's not a separation. We've left the world and the time when somebody has a position and somebody else doesn't. It's not about the position, it's about the relationships and the experiences. Now, let's go back to where we started. Self awareness. Take some time to know who you are, what you think, what you feel, how you make others feel when they're around you, how you feel about those other people. How can you adjust your self management? How can you modify yourself? And I'm going to go one step further and tell you, how can you improve yourself? We hear the word empathy often, but we neglect to really do it. Are you sensitive to other people? Or do you just look at images and say, how could they do that? Back to they. Are you willing to serve, hear, listen? Are you adjusting your perspective? Do you communicate with verbals, nonverbals, tone? Do you recognize that other cultures, other people may be a little bit different? Well, you didn't tell me that directly, so it doesn't count. Well, maybe it does. How are your relationships? Can they be leaders too? Can I follow them? Sure thing. Now, again, I'm just going to hammer home the point. Remember, as a leader, you are the nexus. You are the catalyst for emotions. People look to you for your modeling, for what you're bringing to the table. If you're showing conscious and unconscious bias, expect other members of your team will. If you're being inclusive, if you're being inviting, expect other people in the teams will as well. You are setting the pace, setting the tone, setting the culture, and setting the climate. Don't think of it as a final end game. I've always heard people, again, I repeat myself a bit, but it's important. I hear people say, we have a diverse organization. Whoop-de-doo. What's it going to look like tomorrow? We have an inclusive organization. Really? With all groups, with all people, at all levels? Who? When? How? Where? Think of the questions. How are the relationships? The experiences? Make it worthwhile. To accentuate the best, use assessments, use coaching, use training. Get an independent person to give you perspective and alternatives. When we get different perspectives and alternatives, we all get better. Well, does anybody have any questions or things that they would like to get involved with?
Thank you so much for that, Bob. That was amazing. And you're so right about, well, everything, as you usually are.
Can you tell that to my wife, please, AJ?
I'm not getting in that. So thank you so much. And Since this is a keynote, we weren't necessarily expecting too many questions. So I think people are going to, as they process this, that's usually when we're going to get the questions. So as I get the questions later, I'll make sure to forward them to you. So for anybody watching this later, if you have any questions for our keynote speaker, Bob Jerus, please make sure you put them in the comments. We will be monitoring them even after the live summit is over. And so we can take your comments and send them to Bob, and that way Bob can respond to you directly as a reply to the comments.
The other request I'd like to make, AJ, is if anybody wants the slides for the content, please feel free to share them.
Okay.
And if anybody wants to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn and delighted to make the connections.
Absolutely. I will go ahead and I will put all of those in the comments as well. So if anybody does want these slides, please comment saying, I'd like the slides, and we'll make sure to reach out to you and get your email address so we can get them to you. And we will also put Bob Jerus's contact information in the comments. But if you also, the other thing you can do is go to www.c3eb.com. And Bob Jerus is one of our keynote speakers, so he's in our keynote speakers section. And along with his full bio, you will also find all of Bob Jerus's contact information right there on our website. So you don't even have to wait for us to comment on it. You can go find it right now and connect with Bob on LinkedIn. All right.
Thank you, AJ.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much, Bob. And again, thank you to all of our viewers, whether you're tuning in live or tuning in later. And as a final note, thank you once again to our partners and sponsors who are making this summit and our future programming possible. Thank you to Essential IT, Defy the Status Quo Marketing, Zanzibar Enterprises, and of course, the Nielsen Company. With that being said, I hope you join us on the next session, which is already underway. So we'll see you there. Bye.
Bye.